Tyler, this is jaw-dropping. I'm sorry. I mean, the fact that they've been out talking about this story as long as they have, they felt like they had their strategy put out. Donald Trump Jr. is going to release the emails. He's going to do a big interview where he says, quote, "This is everything. This is all I know about the meeting." And not once is it mentioned that there's another person in this room, let alone someone who was a former Soviet intelligence officer.
No, the ratchet is clicked again on this story. Now it's locked in, and now they're going to be asked who this person is. And as you say, a former Soviet intelligence officer, by definition, has contacts with current former intelligence officers, which would be very concerning. And it is astonishing to me that if we're going to get this out, and by releasing the emails, right, because that's where all the details about this meeting were laid out in black and white, where the president couldn't say this is fake news anymore. The source is his son, and he's given a chance to say everything about this meeting, and he misses the fact that there was someone else in the meeting. Now we're learning it. Now we start all over again.
Willie, we've got us. I'm going to do this calmly. We got to start getting outraged here. This is I got a pit in my stomach as I heard that. You know, you're just sitting there and really visualizing what's going on there. These two kids. And it's interesting when I was watching those images of Jared Kushner, and I've talked often that he's been in his dad's business for 10 years, and that's how Don Jr.'s done. So it's no surprise these guys are doing these absurdly amateurish, like frighteningly absurd things that any intelligent person with a moral compass wouldn't do. But we've got to start being outraged. Jared Kushner needs to lose his security clearance tomorrow.
Here's the question.
Tomorrow.
Does this...
And Don Trump and Bob Mueller, he's got 30 intense intelligence attorneys on this. We've got to double and triple this, because this is the scariest thing I've seen in my life in politics. Really play this out.
Does the former Soviet operative's name appear on Jared Kushner's form, or does he have to go back again and add him?
There's some important reason why the lying is worth it, because there are so many people who are deceiving in this, so many characters, going back to Flynn, to Sessions not disclosing his meeting with Kislyak. There's some important reason why they continue to not come forward with it all, and it's starting to upset Republicans. If you heard Trey Gowdy the other day, he said, enough is enough. Spill it. Tell us everyone you've met with.
And Gene Robinson, Don Jr. asked us to believe his account of not only who was there, but what happened inside that meeting. We, of course, expressed skepticism right away that it's just his account of what happened. So not only did he not mention this fourth person who was in the room, this former Soviet intelligence officer who was sitting in on the meeting, but now it calls into complete question what actually happened in that room. He says it was a nothing meeting. Kushner left after 7 or 8 minutes. Paul Manafort's on the phone. This whole narrative that's been created that it was a worthless meeting and it was a courtesy call. How do you believe a second of that story?
Right. I mean, frankly, I never really believed that, because Donald Trump Jr. lied from the beginning about the meeting. When the New York Times found out about it, he said, oh, it was just about adoptions, and then he told a second lie about it, and finally put out the emails when they were about to be put out by the Times. So his credibility on what happened inside the room was never great. Now there is no credibility about what happened inside the room. I think we go back to square one. Who was this person and what actually happened? And I just can't accept for a moment this idea that it was a nothing burger, nothing happened. We didn't actually get to collude with the Russians, even though we wanted to. I think now you have to say, you know, something much more serious might have happened in that room. And Donnie is right. Bob Mueller is the one to figure it out.
John Meacham, the history of past presidencies is replete, many of them with family issues, sons, daughters, cousins, whatever. But this seems to be a bit different, this particular family issue and the Trump presidency. And I have no idea as to the level of illegality or collusion that existed in that meeting, but the level of ignorance of how we operate as Americans and as people in political life as Americans is kind of astounding.
Well, the Trump example, both in terms of the family and of the in-laws, is unique in American history at this level of and ambient reality of the power of that circle. You know, yes, Bobby Kennedy was Attorney General, and yes, President Kennedy joked that he thought Bobby should get some legal experience by being Attorney General before he went out to practice. But Robert Kennedy was a formidable figure. This is more like the Borgias or the Bonapartes. Remember, Napoleon, you know, put various brothers and cousins on different thrones, and it's taking a toll. I remember just two thoughts on this. One is there's another former Soviet intelligence officer in this mix. His name is Putin. That's important to remember. This guy started out at the KGB. Second, about 2 weeks after the inauguration, I had a conversation, private conversation with a former Obama official, so take this for considering the source, and I said, what do you think about the Russia question? And this person said, I don't have any doubt but that it's true. And I said, well, tell me how this happens. I mean, surely they don't just call up and make an appointment at Trump Tower. Well, turns out maybe they did.
Casey Hunt, we've heard time and again this week from Donald Trump Jr. and from the White House the word transparency. We just heard it again in that clip from Jr.'s interview with Sean Hannity a couple of nights ago. I'm being transparent. I'm the one who put my emails out. I'm showing you all my cards. Excuse me. In fact, he showed his cards and put his emails out because the New York Times said, we have the cards and we're about to put them out. And now that's fallen apart completely, too. This argument of transparency, when you don't lay out honestly and transparently who even was in the room with you during that meeting, let alone what was discussed in that meeting.
Yeah, Willie, a couple points. Look, the reality here is that you're right. We would not know that this meeting ever took place. We wouldn't have any details on who was sitting in the room, nothing, without reporters, newspapers digging into it and telling people that this is what happened. And now, of course, we have this fifth unnamed person in the room that NBC News is reporting. Again, something that after the president and all those around him said, look, we are being transparent about this. We're talking about this. Another clear piece of evidence that they're not. And meanwhile, you have the president continuing to regularly attack the media, a strategy aimed squarely at his base voters, who many of whom it seems may believe that none of this is actually true, or that these reports are simply trying to serve to attack the president. I think that's a very concerted strategy on the part of the White House, and I think it's one that makes some Republicans nervous. You were talking about this a minute ago. I think there is rising concern about kind of the general attempt to discredit the reporting that is out there on this, even among Republicans on Capitol Hill. They may not be willing to say it publicly yet, but they certainly are saying it privately.
All right, Casey Hunt, Gene Robinson, John Meacham, thank you all. We've got much, much more. Stay with us on this breaking news from the NBC News investigative unit. Again, that there was someone else, a fifth person in that controversial meeting between Donald Trump Jr., senior advisor Jared Kushner, former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and a Russian lawyer. Also now, we've learned in that June 9th meeting at Trump Tower of last year was another person with alleged ties to Moscow, a Russian-American lobbyist, a former Soviet counterintelligence officer suspected by some U.S. officials of having ongoing ties to Russian intelligence. That's something he denies. NBC News not naming that lobbyist, who denies any current ties to Russian spy agencies. As I said, his president's likely to be of great interest to investigators, and we're going to talk much more about this coming up. Veselnitskaya, the attorney there, said to NBC News she was accompanied by someone but declined to identify who that is. We're going to go live to the White House on this story next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.